When Rosemary's Baby was released in 1968, the world saw it as just another shocking horror movie. But no one, neither the director, nor the actors, nor the audience, could have predicted that this film would unleash a series of eerie, tragic, and inexplicable events that would haunt Hollywood for decades. Many now believe that Rosemary's Baby was not just a film about evil, it invited it. Directed by Roman Polanski and based on Ira Levin's best-selling novel, Rosemary's Baby told the story of a young woman, Rosemary Woodhouse, played by Mia Farrow, who becomes pregnant with what she believes is the devil's child. The movie was a masterpiece of psychological horror, quiet, disturbing, and deeply symbolic. It captured the paranoia of the late 1960s, the fear of hidden cults, and the loss of personal control. But behind the camera, something darker was brewing. What began as fiction started to bleed into reality. Cast and crew members reported strange coincidences, accidents, and deaths that seemed too sinister to ignore. Over the years, Rosemary's Baby became known not just as one of the greatest horror films ever made, but as one of the most cursed productions in Hollywood history. During production, several crew members claimed the set carried a heavy, almost oppressive atmosphere. Cinematographer William Fraker later recalled that even simple shots would go wrong without explanation. Lights blew out. Film reels came back damaged. Scenes that should have taken an hour stretched into an entire day. Mia Farrow said the air often felt charged, like static before a lightning strike. The producers chose to film many scenes inside New York's legendary Dakota building, a choice that would later become one of the film's most haunting details. The Dakota was an ornate, Gothic-style apartment building overlooking Central Park, with its long corridors and foreboding architecture providing the perfect backdrop for the film's themes of urban isolation and occult conspiracy. Little did anyone know, this same building would later become infamous for something truly horrifying. 12 years after the film's release, in 1980, John Lennon, the former Beatle, was shot and killed outside the Dakota by a deranged fan named Mark David Chapman. Lennon had been living there for years, and his wife, Yoko Ono, still resides in the building. Fans of Rosemary's Baby couldn't ignore the eerie connection. The same building that represented the gateway to evil in the film had become the site of one of the most shocking real-life tragedies in modern history. Some even pointed out that Lennon's song, Imagine, a plea for peace and purity, was in direct contrast to the darkness of the Dakota's cinematic legacy. After Lennon's death, several residents reported seeing his ghost wandering near the entrance. Others heard music late at night, as if someone were still playing a piano behind locked doors. If anyone suffered most from the Rosemary's Baby curse, it was Roman Polanski himself. Just a year after the film made him one of Hollywood's most acclaimed directors, Polanski's life was destroyed by tragedy. In August 1969, his wife, actress Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant, was brutally murdered by members of the Charles Manson cult in the couple's Los Angeles home. Tate's death shocked the world. But what made it even more disturbing was how eerily it mirrored Rosemary's Baby. In the film, Rosemary is manipulated and violated by a satanic cult seeking to bring the Antichrist into the world. In real life, Polanski's pregnant wife was killed by a group of followers who believed in apocalyptic prophecies and, helter-skelter, Manson's twisted version of the end times. Even worse. Before her death, Sharon Tate had told friends about strange visions and premonitions. She claimed to have seen ghostly figures in their home, one of which resembled Jay Sebring, her ex-boyfriend, who would also be murdered that night. She had also reportedly told a friend that she feared something evil was coming. Many people at the time wondered, was Polanski's masterpiece more than a film? Did it somehow invoke what it depicted? The curse didn't stop with Polanski or Tate. The film's producer, William Castle, was soon struck by misfortune of his own. After the movie's release, Castle began receiving hate mail, claiming he had unleashed a demonic force upon the world. He dismissed it at first. But then strange things began happening in his own home. One night, while working late, he suddenly screamed and collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, delirious and babbling about Rosemary's Baby and The Eyes. He survived the incident but was never the same again. Castle, once known as Hollywood's king of gimmicks, withdrew from public life and died just a few years later from a heart attack. Another name associated with the film, composer Christoph Komeda, also met a chilling end. Komeda, who wrote the haunting lullaby that opens the movie, a melody sung by Mia Farrow herself, suffered a bizarre accident in 1969. After a party, he fell off a cliff and went into a coma. He never woke up. Disturbingly, the way he died mirrored a scene from Rosemary's Baby, the mysterious death of a character who also suffers a fatal fall. Mia Farrow, who gave a haunting performance as Rosemary, was also deeply affected by the film's legacy. During filming, she was still married to Frank Sinatra, who disapproved of her role. Their marriage dissolved soon after. Farrow claimed that during production, she began having vivid nightmares and bouts of sleep paralysis. She would wake up in her New York apartment unable to move, feeling as though something heavy sat on her chest. She later said she often felt like she had absorbed Rosemary's paranoia, that the line between fiction and reality had blurred. For decades afterward, Farrow avoided rewatching the movie. When asked in interviews about The Curse, she would only smile nervously and say, "That film changed my life. I'll just leave it at that." The connection between Rosemary's Baby and the Manson murders became one of Hollywood's darkest fascinations. The mansion where Tate and her friends were killed was located at 10050 Cielo Drive, just a few miles from the home of Terry Melcher, a record producer who had previously rejected Charles Manson's music. After the murders, people began to whisper that Polanski's film had somehow opened a door. That Rosemary's Baby was more than entertainment, it was a ritual of sorts, filmed inside a building long rumored to harbor occult energy, directed by a man who would soon lose everything to a real-life cult obsessed with evil. Even Ira Levin, the author of the original novel, admitted he later felt guilty for writing it. He said he feared that his story might have contributed to a resurgence of satanic fascination in the 1970s. He once remarked, "I didn't want to think I had written a book that helped the devil's cause." The Dakota itself, the real-life building used as inspiration for the Bramford in the film, has long been considered one of New York's most haunted places. Built in the 1880s, it was rumored to have been home to black magic practitioners, including Aleister Crowley's followers. Residents have reported seeing ghostly children, shadowy figures in hallways, and even inanimate objects that move on their own. Boris Karloff, the legendary horror actor, once lived there and reportedly performed seances in his apartment. Others spoke of strange smells of sulfur or sudden chills in rooms with no open windows. Even before Lennon's death, locals considered the Dakota cursed, a place where the veil between life and death seemed thin. The Rosemary's Baby curse didn't stop in the 1970s. In 2009, Roman Polanski, then in his 70s, was arrested in Switzerland on a decades-old charge related to an underage girl. The arrest reopened wounds that had never fully healed. To some, it seemed as though Polanski could never escape the shadow of his own film. Meanwhile, the cultural fascination with satanic themes only grew. Films like The Exorcist and The Omen, both of which would develop curses of their own, seemed to carry forward the same dark energy that began with Rosemary's Baby. In interviews, Linda Blair, The Exorcist, and others would later admit they had heard about the Rosemary's Baby curse before starting their projects. It was as if the movie had planted a seed, a cinematic gateway to misfortune that spread through the horror genre like an invisible contagion. Paranormal researchers have long debated whether Rosemary's Baby was cursed or if the tragedies were merely coincidence amplified by Hollywood superstition. But some details remain hard to ignore. For instance, in one early draft of the script, the address of the cursed apartment was 72. The Manson murders took place at 10050 Cielo Drive, numerically adding up to 72. Coincidence? Maybe. But it's the kind of eerie parallel that fans of the occult notice immediately. Others have pointed out that Polanski shot many scenes using mirrors, symbolizing the thin barrier between worlds. During editing, a film technician reportedly said the reels felt wrong, as though something was inside the film itself. When the movie premiered, several audience members fainted during screenings. One woman reportedly had a seizure and screamed, "He's real," as she was carried out of the theater. Even Ira Levin's widow later said she believed something lingered around those involved in the project. Perhaps the most chilling detail comes from the film's central prophecy, the birth of the Antichrist, born to bring chaos to the world. In 1968, this was just a story. But the following year, 1969, saw the Manson murders, the Zodiac killings, the escalation of the Vietnam War, and one of the most violent cultural upheavals in modern memory. Many at the time felt as though innocence itself had died. Rosemary's Baby, in hindsight, seemed like a warning, a prophecy cloaked as entertainment. Today, more than 5 decades later, the shadow of Rosemary's Baby still looms over Hollywood. The Dakota remains a site of fascination for ghost hunters. Polanski's name is still tied to tragedy and scandal. Sharon Tate is remembered as both a victim and an icon of doomed innocence. Whenever someone brings up cursed films, Rosemary's Baby is always near the top of the list, not just because of the deaths and coincidences, but because it feels like something darker truly attached itself to that project. The lullaby still chills audiences. The story still disturbs. And the legacy of those involved remains haunted by echoes of that fictional baby's cry. As one film historian put it, Rosemary's Baby didn't just tell a story about evil entering the world. It showed us what happens when the line between art and the supernatural disappears. Maybe that was the real curse, that everyone who touched it saw a glimpse of something they were never meant to see. Because in Hollywood, sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones written for the screen, they're the ones that follow you home.